Hi, we're going to take a look at your MT2 final affirmation. You didn't do as poorly as you made it seem in your email. In fact, I went back and I looked at a lot of your answers. A lot of your answers were partially correct or totally correct. Well, not totally correct, but there were a lot of them were partially correct. This first one, thanks for showing your work. The work really helps me see your thinking. You solved the equation, the absolute, whoops, need a pen there, the absolute value of x plus 11 equals 21. That's what your work is for. But notice in this problem, 11 isn't inside the absolute value. You need to isolate the absolute value first before you make the two equations. So what you want to do is we want to subtract 11 first, because it's not inside the absolute value, to get the absolute value by itself. So you bring down the absolute value of x, and the 11's cancel, and you get 21 minus 11 is 10. 10. 10. Now you make your two equations to get rid of the absolute value, because now you're saying, hey, what numbers, hint, what numbers are 10 away from 0? Well, it's 10 and negative 10. So you say x equals 10 or x equals negative 10. Since x is by itself, you're done with that equation. So very, very simple mistake there. We have to get the absolute value by itself before you make two equations. Let's take a look at another question here. This one. You didn't show all your work, but I think you're on the right track there. You did show some work, so thank you. What I wanted to see is, hey, what's the least common denominator or the least common multiple? Well, if we take a look at 4, 5, and 3, nothing goes into 4, 5, and 3. So we multiply them. 4 times 5 times 3. Well, 4 times 5 times 3, well, that's 60. So what I want to see in your work is multiply this term by 60, this term by 60, and this term by 60. Now 4 goes into 60 15 times, which is what you wrote. You wrote negative 15, but you have to take 15 times negative 5. Well, 15 times negative 5 is negative 75. And then we do the same thing. 5 goes into 60 12 times. So 12 times 2x, because you're multiplying, come on, 12 times 2x, well, that'd be 24x. So that equals 24x. And then finally, 3 goes into 60 20 times. Now we take 20 times 4, so 20 times 4 is 80. I don't know why I'll just put it as a negative 80. Now we want to get x by itself. You just forgot to multiply by each of those terms. So now let's undo adding 80. So we're going to add 80 to both sides. If we add 80 to both sides, we end up with 5 equals 24x. Well, to get x by itself, we divide both sides by 24. X equals 5. Can never write my 5s correctly on an iPad. 5 over 24. And there's your answer. Now, on the next problem, you set it up perfectly. So we say, the only thing is, why don't you like the 6? why did you ignore the 6 when you distributed? You got to take 4 times v, which you did. You got 4v, but you got to take 4 times negative 6. That's the only mistake you made. So then we're going to say negative 15. Sorry about that. My pen is old. I need to get a different pen out here. So negative 15 equals negative 7v plus 4v minus 24, because 4 times 6 is 24. Now, it looks like, yeah, you combine your v's correctly, so you got negative 15 equals negative 3v minus 24. Well, then we're going to add 24 to both sides. And you end up with 9, positive 9, equals negative 3v. Divide both sides by negative 3. Negative 3 equals v. And that was your correct answer. Now, on this problem, if I look at what you wrote the sum of 8 times the number and 5 equals 7. That's not what the problem is it? Notice the problem goes 8 times the sum. So you needed to put 5, a number, and 5 in the parentheses. So what we needed here, let me change pen colors so we can see the difference. It would 8 and then the sum, because we want to add first. Since you want to add first, you have to put it in parentheses, equals 7. So you're just off a tad there, which led to the incorrect answer. On this problem, I get to have a little fun here. This is all correct. Right here. 4y minus 4y. Let me show you a little picture here. Let's say I've got 4 apples. Whoa, really big. I've got 4 apples. I take away those 4 apples. Bam, I'm taking them away. How many apples do I have left? Well, I'm hoping you said, hey, Mr. Griff, that's kind of a dumb question. I have 0 left. That's right. You have 0 left. So when you take 4y minus 4y right here, you don't get y. It's gone. This is 0. So your equation, let me make this a little bit thinner here. Your equation at this point is 0 plus 5 equals 5. Well, what's 0 plus 5? Well, that's 5 equals 5. Is there a variable here? Once again, I can't write 5s on the iPad. There's no variable. That's always going to be true. If that's always going to be true, the correct answer is all real numbers. If you would have ended up with like 5 equals 6, that would have been no solution. Now, let's take a look at the second problem. 2u plus 1 is 2. 2 times u plus 1 is 2u plus 2 plus 7. Add the 2's, you get 9. 3u minus 6 plus 2u. Well, 3u plus 2u is 5u. So you subtract 2u from both sides, you get 3u. You add 6 to both sides. Is 9 plus 6, 6? I'm hoping you're saying no, it's not. So at this point, it should have been 15 equals 3u. So then we divide both sides by 3, and u should have been 5 as the correct answer instead of 3. Now, let's take a look at this one. This is what I want to know is going through that fantastic brain of yours. Why did you write down 9? Because your work says the absolute value of 2 minus 7. Well, the only thing is it should have been the absolute value of negative 5. And what's the absolute value of negative 5? It's 5. I have no clue why you wrote down 9. You would have been closer if you wrote down negative 5, but you had to take the absolute value of that, which gives us 5. Now, on this question, you did the work right to solve the equation. The only problem is you wrote the equations wrong. This is more of a reading question, I think, than it is a math question. Let's take a look. An air traffic controller is tracking 2 planes. To start, plane A was at 970 meters. It started at 970. So it should have been 970. And then in plane B was an altitude at 1438. Plane B, let me change colors here. Plane B started at 1,438 feet. Then plane A is losing altitude, so it's going down. So it's losing altitude at 17 meters per second. So we're going to subtract 17 meters every second, and we want x to be seconds, so 970 minus 17x. And then plane B is losing altitude at 26 meters per second. You had the equations backwards there. The way you wrote it is the plane was gaining in 17 feet per second for part A, but it was starting 970 feet in the ground. That doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Last question. I have no clue how you got this answer. I don't know if it was the last question you just kind of gave up, but let's take a look what you did here. You minus 3b. I don't know why you did that, but that's right. I don't know why you divided by 3. That's wrong. Because if you divide by 3, well, actually, this part is right. A minus 3b over 3 equals c over 3. But then you can't go from here. Whoops. You can't go from here to here. That doesn't make sense at all. How in the world do you get b by itself? If you divide by 3, let's talk about what you did. A minus 3b all over 3 equals c over 3. The question says solve for b. You want to put this b by itself. So the first thing, now that we've done all this work, we're going to do more work. We're going to multiply both sides by 3 so you can get b by itself. So then we got a minus 3b equals c. Because notice the 3's reduce on each side. So in other words, I'm undoing that last step you did. Now, we want to get b by itself. So you want to get rid of that a. What's the opposite of a? Well, we're going to subtract a. Let's subtract a from both sides. And then we would have gotten, because you can't combine c and a, you're going to get negative 3b equals c minus a. Now we're going to divide both sides by negative 3. And there's your answer. b equals c minus a divided by negative 3. Now let's take a look at this question from the beginning. Unless b is by itself, don't move it. Let's do this problem. So I'm going to minus c from both sides. So then we get A minus C equals 3B. Then to get B by itself, you divide by 3. You get C, or not C. So I'm going to erase. I get A minus C over 3 equals B. Do you see that these two equations are exactly the same thing? The only difference is this equation has 3 being positive. If you want to figure out why this is positive, well, it's really simple. Let's multiply the numerator and the denominator by -1. So then we get B equals, let's distribute that -1. So we get negative C plus A. A negative times a negative is a positive. That's still not the same, is it? Actually, it is the same. I'm just going to flip the order of the A's and C's around. So you get A minus C all over 3. Those two equations are exactly the same. Now, which way is easier? The one on the left that took us 2 lines to get that answer? Or the way you did it, which is 1, 2, 3, well, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, 5. This took us 5 steps to get an answer that was acceptable. Then all we did is we converted so it's the same. So make sure you do inverse operations and keep it simple.